All right. Yeah, recording has started. Well, good morning. It is Friday. We called it Brunch and Learn. And today's topics, and again, feel free to have your cameras on or off. This is not a mandatory. These are never mandatory. I try to share some information as we're going over things either in cabinet or, with Colleen and I discussing things in faculty senate or just kind of hallway conversations. Some things of like, that would be a really good lunch and learn. So thanks to Seth, we are recording this for folks who can't be with us. And I've learned how to post this on YouTube, and I'm working on that transition from My Methodist to Brightspace for Faculty Information Center. I still hope to have that ready to go the first part of August. It's just Brightspace. I like their new environment, but their new environment in PDFs, you can't really scroll past 2 pages. That's problematic. Most of our stuff is longer than 2 pages. So just plugging away on that. So good morning. One of the things that I just kind of put in the calendar of invite things to talk about today. And I had on here just some random topics, and really it was with the guise of, as you're all winding down from the summer semester, I know you're already thinking about the fall semester, what to put in syllabi, what kind of conversations to have with students. And that really led to some of these topics. I thought, man, you guys are so busy that first week prior to classes starting. I don't plan on doing an August lunch and learn. I haven't done one before because you guys are super busy, but was just hoping I could maybe squeeze one in before fall. So as a former faculty member myself, I don't know why I always got nervous that first day of classes. I like, butterflies in the stomach and the whole thing walking into a classroom. I loved it, but at the same time, it made me a little nervous. We all have our syllabus there for the first day of classes to go over. But if you're like me, obviously we have the syllabus template that's on My Methodist. But my syllabus as a faculty member, man, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger because I kept having student issues that I'm like, oh, I got to put that in my syllabus, or oh, I got to put that in my syllabus. So I just wanted to talk through some of those things and have conversations about, our syllabus template, conversations you can have with students, but also as faculty, with academic freedom, things that you can put in your syllabi, right? So just wanted to go through that and answer any questions. So please feel free to put things in the chat. We've got a good bunch of folks on here, but I mean, if you want to go off mute and ask a question, hey, it's Friday morning. I'm okay with that too. So first and foremost, I'll kind of share my screen as I typically do, just to go through where certain things are. As I mentioned, I am working diligently to try to get all the information that's in My Methodist moved, copied over to Brightspace. Now, that being said, please know that Brightspace is not going away, right? Or Brightspace, the My Methodist faculty information page, that's not going to go away. We still have that there. It's just we're probably not going to be updating that with the new policies and new things. We're going to try to update it in the Brightspace part. So I'm looking at the folks that we've got with us today, and I know we've got some new folks. So I am just going to go back to a little bit of some beginning things. When I say My Methodist, when you go to Nebraska Methodist College's website, it was funny because I was talking with someone on Wednesday who's been here for about 5 years. And I said, yeah, go to the website. And they kept pulling up My Methodist. I'm like, that's not the website, like the college website, that's My Methodist. So terminology is important. If you get confused on the terminology that we use, which I wouldn't blame you, we've got a lot of different terms. When I refer to My Methodist and currently our Faculty Information Center, that will take you to this site here. And please know that as we talk about maybe transitioning where some information is, we felt like it would be really helpful to have faculty information in Brightspace because that's a one-stop shop. You guys are going there for your classes. That does not mean that this is going away. Okay, this is My Methodist. If you look at the top, all these buttons on the top, this is why this is not going away. This is a big hub for students. This is where they go for advising. This is where they go to pay their bills. This is where they go for all kinds of things. So we have no intention of My Methodist going away. I think it's always really helpful for all of our students, our undergrad students, our graduate students, as we welcome them onto campus, to familiarize them with our language as well. A lot of you, we talk about My Methodist and Brightspace. Very possible your folks don't do that. I know that within our graduate program, Alice and her team do a really good job during that on-site orientation to kind of walk them through this. And Katie Mites, their advisor, is wonderful. But I think my first just hint would be never assume that faculty or students know what you're talking about in terms of My Methodist or Brightspace. Always good the first day of class just to do what I'm doing here, just kind of pull up different screenshots and say, hey, when we talk about My Methodist, this is what it is, this is how you get there, and all that good stuff. I refer a lot to the faculty information page. That is this little tab down here that takes you to all these things. So that's what I'm working on getting transitioned over in kind of a more user-friendly way into Brightspace and a faculty information center. But at the same time, like I said, this is not going away. So when in doubt, if it's really overwhelming and where do things live, faculty information center will still stay here. It's just our goal is you'll all this fall become more familiar, happy with the Brightspace Faculty Information Center, and that will be the one place we update it. And again, questions or anything, feel free to post it in here. Typically, why I always bring up the Methodist website is this is our hub for policies. Okay, so inevitably throughout the semester, someone will have a question and like, I don't even know if that's a policy. Where does that live? First and foremost, if you're on campus or you're walking around and not maybe at your computer, walk through the admin suites, talk with Dana, talk to Virginia, talk to myself, anyone who's here, just to say, do you guys know where this policy lives? Chances are really good we do. For all of you, your co-chairs for academic standards, and that is committee with faculty senate. They review policies on a schedule. Your co-chairs, and I just reviewed that this week with Janine Kernan. And then Becca Bocart is the other co-chair for academic standards. But policies, come to the website, go to student life, or I'm sorry, go to about policies and procedures. That's where all of these things live. One of the things that I wanted to go over a little bit today was to talk about academic freedom. I know some of my Create team is on the call, and I want them to know I'm not giving anything away of what we're going to go over in faculty development day. But I did want to just kind of touch on academic integrity, and Sarah Murphy has joined the call too, just to talk a little bit. There's been a lot of conversation. I'm sure everyone's heard about, testing center hours and what that's going to look like. Right now, that's kind of a moving target. That group is working really hard, and I'm going to let Sarah talk about that for a minute. But we're going to talk about academic integrity in a bigger realm, right? One of the things that we talked about in our Create meeting is that we tend to focus on quizzes and test taking. I would say probably 65% of our courses are really heavy in the test taking part, but a majority of our courses, especially in the graduate programs, we're going to talk about academic integrity from a writing perspective, and chat GPT and those kind of things. I think the biggest thing, and we are going to talk about this a little bit, is when it comes to academic integrity, does anyone know the number one deterrent from having students not cheat in your class? Anyone? Anyone at all? Sarah, you can't answer. Neither can you, Spencer. The number one deterrent to keep students from cheating in your courses, either by quizzes, anything. If you know it, or even you have a guess, feel free to put it in the, clear expectations and communications. Josh Owen, man, you know stuff. You are right. That first conversation that it can be that first day of class. I think you all know, standing in front of students, you're giving them so much information that first day of class, their eyes might kind of bug and roll over a little bit. But I think if you have synchronous or asynchronous, online, in person, having that conversation in your discussion of the syllabus is always important, but just hitting it home throughout the semester is so important. Really talking about our policy. Our policy kind of lives here, down here with academic integrity. And if you haven't had a chance, again, to just browse policies, which I'm sure all of you are like, yeah, I do that all the time. With this academic integrity policy, the thing I love about this policy, and again, I'm kind of a nerd, I do like policies. The one thing to know about this is that group that worked on this policy initially took a lot of time to really define out what is falsification or fabrication, what is cheating, what is collusion, what is plagiarism, how do we deem multiple submissions. I think it's so important to let students know. And again, a lot of things that we'll talk about here will either say academic integrity or cheating. There are different formats. And I would say if you're teaching a course that has a reflection paper or some type of paper in there, and maybe you say, hey, get with a partner and have this conversation, you want to be really clear about explaining to the students what is working together as a partner and what is collusion, and the fact of just kind of turning in the same wording on two different sheets of paper. Your ability, and again, I'm going to use Josh's words, of just being really clear in your expectations and communication is so important. So again, with this academic integrity, as a faculty member, if you choose to kind of highlight some of these things in that syllabus first day of class conversation before a paper or a test is due, you may have it. If you're teaching an online class, one of the things that I had done would be like a little first week quiz that people could get kind of some easy points around, but they had to really look through some of these important policies so I could tell. Maybe they didn't read all of it, but they at least had to open it and pull it up and look at it. I think those are all things you can do. These policies are not something that we have students sign off on. Like, we know that you've read that. We do that for handbooks. But it is something as an individual faculty member, if that's something like, gosh, can I print this off and have students sign it that, I know they've read it? You certainly can. That is completely up to you. One of the other things I want to get into, just in terms of, academic freedom and what it looks like, is a little bit, again, related to the testing center. Again, most of our courses that utilize the testing center are undergraduate classes. So for my graduate folks, this may exclude you a little bit, but did just want to give you all an update on testing center changes, what that looks like, and still what's yet to be determined. So Sarah, I'll kind of tee you up for that, and I can hop in and talk about it too.
Great. Well, thanks for including me, Amy. Hey, all the faculty here on the call. I am sitting in an empty classroom, getting ready to give the welcome at Care Day. It's our final nursing care day today. So really exciting to have about 35 nursing students here on campus with their guests. So that's why I'm in an empty classroom if I'm echoey. But a really quick kind of elevator speech on testing center changes. Lots of folks on this call are up to speed on this, or at least included in some capacity. So the testing center has been in a point of focus since about early spring 2023 in the OSE department. And that primarily was motivated by the growing need and demand of our ADA students who qualify to use the testing center. And then also really hearing over the last year, especially the faculty voice around makeup tests and how we best accommodate our students who need to take makeup exams. And those needs have also continued to grow due to really a good shout out for you all on this call. Some of the flexibility and understanding that our faculty carry when a student can't make an exam or gets sick or gets a flat tire. And so we've been really brainstorming ways in which we can better serve all of the students that use the testing center. And one of the biggest changes that we have been working on here in the last 4 or 5 months is looking at how we increase flexibility for students to complete their exams, which will allow us to better serve more students in the testing center. Even with some more limited hours, we'll actually have a greater capacity because we would be able to use the testing center up to the 25 seats that are in the testing center during the hours that it's open. And that is not something that we are currently able to manage or control in that way. So we are introducing a new software called Register Blast that will be integrated into Brightspace for the fall 2023 semester. Register Blast is, the way I think about it in a kind of an informal way, is a hub for us to collect information from faculty that in the past, if you've used the testing center as a faculty member, you might remember that Stacy Nelson in the past has collected forms and digital information about when your tests are scheduled, about detailed information about whether students can use scratch pads or whether they can use a word bank on their exams. Register Blast will centralize that in an organized software that is built for test collection, or at least test information collection and student scheduling. Then Register Blast is also structured to be much like Calendly. For those of you who are on the Calendly session yesterday, students will then be able to go in and schedule their own exams using the availability of the testing center. So if there is a seat, it will show them as an availability for that time. So we are able, again, to really maximize the space that we do have in that testing center. We know that these will be some big changes for both faculty and students. So the library will be taking over the coordination and administration of the testing center. So Whitney Springer, who is just so amazing, and we're so lucky to have her here in the last 11 months, is working on micro kind of education opportunities for both faculty and students. So we're looking at doing some voiceover videos for faculty on how to do specific things in Register Blast, like input your information, like being able to set your notification settings if you want to see when a student schedules or cancels an exam. And then we'll be doing the same for students so that they know how they can get in and schedule their tests. That will be a big culture change for our students. So we do anticipate lots of questions and need for guidance because our students right now have their tests scheduled for them. But we will be asking their autonomy in getting that done. We'll also be hosting at least a couple different kind of open house sessions where students want to bring all their syllabi who use the testing center. We will sit with them for this first semester and help them schedule out hopefully all their exams for the term so that we can walk them through this first time for those students who will want some additional support on Register Blast. Very quickly, we do have a steering committee, a faculty steering committee for the testing center. I collected or requested that the academic deans provide me a few faculty names from each of their divisions of faculty members that would be good to help us think through education, communication, and processes. So we've been meeting weekly for the past few weeks, a really, really awesome group comprised of arts and sciences, HP, and nursing. In addition, Whitney and I are meeting separately with Erin and Emily from nursing to talk about ACE, because we realized very quickly that ACE has very differing needs. And so how do we best serve the pace of that accelerated program? So those are also standing meetings that are ongoing. The faculty members who are serving on the steering committee are doing great, at least from my perception, of talking to the faculty in their divisions. So you might have a steering committee member come and ask you questions or throw something out at a meeting. Nothing that we're discussing, well, there's really nothing at all, but what we're discussing is not secretive or so share feedback, ask questions. The steering committee has access to a Google spreadsheet that we are collecting concerns, thoughts, and feedback from faculty and then reviewing those at each of our weekly meetings. So you can also, if you have anything that you want to share directly with Whitney and myself, absolutely send us a direct email. That's fine as well. We'll get that added to the spreadsheet for the steering committee to review. But in the next 2 weeks, look for information from Whitney and myself with finalization of the testing center hours with some hopeful micro-learning videos attached and further information about Register Blast. I mentioned this at the very start, but Register Blast will be integrated into Brightspace. So that's going to be, I think, very beneficial for you as faculty and for students, because like Amy said at the top of the call, we're putting that in a place that everybody is already kind of living for their academic work. And there are some things that the system, as integrated into Brightspace, will automatically know. So it will really help streamline some of that collection process.
So one of the things I have Sarah for a tiny bit, so I did want to mention, and this does feed in, Lori, I see your question. Will there be any policies about having to take the missed exam before the next exam is to be given? So here's what I think is important for all of you. I want to talk, Lori, I'm going to answer your question, but I want to talk a moment about how this feeds into our policies and really the federal compliance policies as it relates to ADA. When we have a student, and here's what I would say for all faculty, graduate, undergraduate, if you have a faculty or a student that has accommodations, it is the responsibility of the student to provide the faculty member with their letter of accommodations. Now, here's what I want you all to be really clear on. It's possible that a student comes up to you, texts you, emails you, puts in the discussion chat, privately, I've got accommodations. As a faculty member, your next kind of response is, can you please supply me with your letter? You as the faculty member, and for those of you who are in nursing, it's important that that communication, if you're teaching with 4 people in a class, you've got a course coordinator, all of that, as soon as one of you in that course has a conversation with a student that, they're just saying, I have accommodations, your response, and again, what they should be doing is bringing to you that letter. Lisa and Stacy, and working with students, they do inform students, it is their responsibility. So what we as faculty don't want to do, and again, I've been in administration a long time, but also a faculty member, and I will tell you legally where we get into trouble is when it's kind of some common sense things. So if a student says I have, testing accommodations, and we as faculty don't help them that kind of process the next stage in terms of, if you said, okay, great, and then either you forget or the student forgets to ask, the onus for us as faculty is really to make sure that we remind them, you should have a letter. Please supply me with that letter. If they're like, I don't have a letter, I don't know what that means, get a hold of Sarah, get a hold of myself. We'll direct them to Stacy and Lisa for kind of walking them through that process. But that is a very important piece, that how this feeds into either testing or writing accommodations, whatever that looks like, is that that letter will have very specific information in it about what that student has for accommodations. As we talk about the testing center, it is important that you all know within your individual courses. So again, for nursing, and how I'm going to answer your question, Lori, we do not have a policy at the college that says you've got to take this test in a certain amount of time before your next test. That's a conversation specifically in nursing, since there's multiple people in a course. You want to have, obviously, at that course level with that coordinator, but you want to have with Emily and Aaron as your kind of program coordinators of what is our philosophy and policy with regards to that. For everyone else in the college in different programs, who can I pick on? I see Ashley. So I would say for Ashley, for example, hey, if you have in respiratory, you're teaching a class, you may want to say very specifically in your syllabi and have a conversation with your students about, hey, if you have testing accommodations, we're going to test on this day and date. You've got 72 hours to take the test. As a faculty member, OSE is here to help you. It is there to be your resources and help get that student registered to take the test. If you tell a student and you have in your syllabus, you have 72 hours from the time that we start the test to take that test, again, encourage those students to work with OSE to help them get that test scheduled. We're trying to have it so the testing center has more free time. It may not mean that those students are taking it the exact same time as other students. I will tell you right now, we can put 9 million things in place. We are never going to catch every single student who cheats. We're going to have a bigger conversation about that at Faculty Development Day. And I was never a nice enough friend or student or anybody to tell everybody else what was on the test. We're going to talk about some of those things separately at Faculty Development Day and kind of work through that. But it's important that you know, as faculty, like, oh my gosh, I have a student with accommodations. I got to figure out a time to get them into the testing center. You really don't. What we're trying to make sure is, again, the onus is on the student. As a faculty member, it is your role to provide a fair and equitable solution to testing. So if that is, you've got an 8 a.m. class, that class starts at 8. And it's funny because somebody on here, I know is gone, we just had this conversation yesterday. If that class starts at 8 and you're giving everybody an hour for the test, and then lecture is going to start at 9, if somebody has additional testing time for that 8 a.m. class, what's fair and reasonable is not that you hold everybody else up, or that, maybe we open up an hour earlier to give that student additional time. What's fair and reasonable is that student then has 72 hours to make up that test. Some of you may be thinking, okay, and again, there's some programs that are a little different, but in that 72-hour window, if there is one student, because again, we'll be talking about one-offs, that just can't get in anywhere, again, work with Sarah, work with Lisa, work with Stacy. We'll all come in at 7 and give the test to the one student whose schedule is so packed that they can't get it. We'll work with that, but just, we're trying to plan for every situation. We don't know every situation, but I think as faculty, it's important that the onus is not always on you as the faculty member to do all these different things. The student truly has to let you know, has to formally let you know the letter. And again, if you're co-teaching or team teaching a course, everyone in that class who's part of that class as a faculty member should get that letter. And then it's important that, oh, Kenneth, I think I was hearing something, so I was like, oh, wait a minute. It's just important that you all know that work with OSE and have those folks work with those students. That's what they're there. Sarah and I really want that cohesion of, hey, we've got a student with accommodations, pick up the phone, walk down, talk to Stacy and Lisa in terms of like those coordinators. And then as we get the testing center more formalized, who's, actually proctoring the test, to have a conversation, but we provide what is fair and equitable in that respect. Hirschus, we had a statement in the syllabus that states that the student have to provide the accommodation letter. Yes, so that is part of our syllabus and really every syllabus, that if you have accommodations and it's that ADA statement, that is the responsibility of the student. So that legally is something we put in there and we always want to have in there. So more to come on that, but I do think as faculty, it's important that with the academic integrity, so I'm going to share my screen again. One of the things that I know sometimes gets confusing, and again, you guys, you all have so much on your plate as faculty and managing classes and doing all the things. Let us help you. Let me help you. If you have questions, Amy, I don't know where this is. What do I do with this? Oh my gosh, just let me know. One of the things that when this policy was being looked at again, a lot of faculty, especially those of you that are newer, gosh, a student cheats on a paper. What is the, what's the consequences? That is really, as a faculty member, that is up to you. One of the hardest things as a faculty member you'll probably ever have to do. And we were lamenting and create about, gosh, what does that look like in terms of my first cheater, right? First student who tried to plagiarize was a paper. And I think it's very easy as a faculty member to experience emotions, which you wouldn't think you would. But I think for a lot of us, we remember our first person who cheated in a class. And our first thought was, do they think I'm dumb? Like, why would they do this? Like, Do they think I wouldn't catch it, right? I see Alice nodding her head. Like, how the student that cheated in, I was teaching a human growth and development class, and she used the term breast buds in the first paragraph. I'm like, yeah, you didn't write that. And I kind of was fueled by anger a little bit, like, did you not think I wouldn't catch it? It's important that you really start to think about potential situations that happen in your class. I philosophically, and again, this is where at the course level, you have to have conversations if you're teaching with a group, but if you individually are teaching a course, and your thought and philosophy on they cheated on a paper, they should fail the class, just keep in mind that your syllabus dictates how you're going to handle from the get-go those academic integrity issues, and the student's going to follow that to the letter. So if you feel like if a student cheats on a paper, they should get a 0 for the paper and they have to, that would fail them from the class. If your policy, if your grading policy, if the points you have set up in the class or a statement doesn't reflect that in the syllabus, you really can't do that. If I'm a student in SES class and I cheat on a test and he is so upset with me, fails me, gives me 0 for the test, but it's a 15-point test in a 1,000-point class, and he doesn't have anywhere in his syllabus that by me cheating, I'm out of the class or out of the program, right? We get a lot of that, of like, they should be out of the program. If you individually don't have that information in your syllabus, you can't hold a student to that. So I think it's important that as you kick off your semester, you have some of those questions about, gosh, if we have a student that cheats, and again, we have examples for you. This isn't what you have to do in this academic integrity policy, but you could give a warning. You could require the student to redo the assignment. Even though I was super angry with that student who plagiarized her entire paper, I personally, you all may do something different. And that again is where that academic freedom comes in. I met with the student. I had highlighted everything that was copied on other pages from journals that were on there and just kind of gave it to her and said, let's have a conversation about this. She cried and said, I'm a horrible writer. I've never been able to start a paper when I started to do this. And for me, it had a lot to do with how they responded. Again, philosophically, you may be sitting there going, Amy, I would never do that. Everybody's treated the same. All's fair in love and war. For me, I didn't teach a life or death class. I taught human growth and development, and it was about puberty. So for me, it was more important that that student learned how to write the dang paper. So I told the student, you're gonna rewrite this. The highest grade, if you get everything right, is an 80%. So again, it wasn't, I'm failing you from the paper, that's it. I took that opportunity to do that. Again, as a faculty member, as long as it's clear and consistent in your syllabus, you can make whatever decision you should make. Again, not to get too far into academic integrity, because Spencer's probably on here going, you're giving up a lot of stuff we're talking about at faculty development, but just know as you're stepping into your classes and you're finalizing those fall syllabi, check your grading, have those conversations with your dean, program director, program coordinator, course coordinator, what is our philosophy in terms of if someone cheats on a test, or, what does that look like? It's important. I'm trying to think, Sarah, I do have on here because I know, again, you're in and out with Care Day, so I appreciate it. I did want to just kind of mention tutor services and SI services. And this is really for all of you as it relates to students who may want to be able to, I just saw in the chat, I'm so sorry. When will testing center hours be finalized? In 2 weeks. Thanks, Sarah. Do we have a blanket policy, Kenneth, for cheating? Our blanket policy for academic integrity is exactly what you're looking at here on the screen, and has to do, it's that academic integrity policy. But again, you need to really think within your individual course and have a conversation with the other folks in arts and sciences and with your dean about cheating and what that may look like. But our only blanket policy is defining it out, explaining the process of how to report it, and the appeals process. But what you do with your individual course is really up to you within your individual course. Tutoring, sorry, you guys, I never have enough time. One of the things that I think is important, and we tote a lot at Care Days and Welcome Days, is that I talk to students all the time about, if you're leaning us to Nebraska Methodist College, we're leaning right back into you, right? I'm going to include writing services because I know graduate program has a robust kind of writing center option for their students, and Marlon is so great about advertising to all of you, utilize our writing services here on campus. All of those services that we offer are not mandated, but they are things we want students to lean into. So one of the things I tell students is I love saying names at graduation, but the student names that I say at graduation are there because they've leaned in. They've leaned into services. They've recognized at one point or another, they've needed help with writing. They've needed help with a lab. They've needed supplemental instruction. But what I think is important is take a pulse of your students to make sure that if you gave them a resource, like, hey, make sure you reach out to Marlon and follow this process, or, graduate folks, here's our writing offerings, or tutors or SSIs for undergraduate. You want to have a follow-up conversation with them to make sure, one, if they are actually using it, but like, how is access to those services going? Stacy and Sarah and their teams do a lot of work putting together the tutoring services, do a lot of work putting together the SI. Marlon does a lot of work in putting together writing services. So we've got all the things, but as a faculty member, just make sure that you're kind of touching base with your students to say, gosh, have you guys utilized these resources? How's that going? Because we've had just unique situations where students have felt like, because of either access or things that were told to them in the class, or maybe they've heard from us at Care Days, hey, we have supplemental instruction, we have tutors, and they're saying, I was never offered a tutor. The best thing you can do within your own course is have a follow-up conversation with Stacy, have a follow-up conversation with Sarah, and say, hey, I teach X. So Kenneth, I'm putting you on the spot too. As a new faculty member and teaching chemistry in some of those courses, that would be a great thing for you to ask your dean, or just follow up with Stacy and say, gosh, what are the services that my students have access to in terms of tutoring or SI services? Sarah, anything to add kind of about that?
No, so tutor recruitment is full scale, has been full scale all summer. I think for faculty, one of the things that is helpful to know is as we've moved to a model of primarily using drop-in tutoring, which the drop-in tutoring space is in the second floor LARC, in one of the large study rooms. And so the schedule for when tutors for each subject area will be posted within those drop-in spaces is typically finalized by the end of the first week of classes. It is also put onto the My Methodist page under the tutoring tab. So if you as a faculty member are working with a student or just wanting to promote that within your course, you can access either outside of the physical space or on My Methodist. And if you're wanting to do that prior to that schedule being updated during the first week, reach out to Stacy. Oftentimes she is, has most of it nailed down, but might still be chasing down a tutor or two for their schedule and can tell you for your courses when that might be. So just wanted to make sure you knew where to access that also.
Kenneth, you're so great.
Is that on Brightspace?
Oh, go ahead.
Is that
so
on
right,
Brightspace too?
As far as not that I'm aware of, Seth. So right now there's a tutoring tab in My Methodist, and I don't know if there's a spot for Brightspace, not that I'm aware, but I can follow up with Stacy and put something in the chat here before the end of the call.
And Kenneth, your comment, I know you're being brought up to speed. Anyone who has been a new faculty member ever, but also in your first year, it's like drinking water from a fire hose. Like, you're doing as best as you can, and please use your resources. And that goes outside of graduate, undergraduate. boy, if there's someone in the hallway and you're like, do you know this? Ask anybody. It's for sure overwhelming. So in terms of tutoring and SI, one of the things is if you do have an SI instructor, and maybe Sarah, if you want to just touch on how we determine what courses have SI, what that looks like.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the overall philosophy, so SI is a national established program. The overall philosophy of SI is to focus on courses that have a lower pass fail rate than other courses on campus, and or that we have identified students with other differing needs, such as ADA accommodations, or first gen students have a more difficult time being successful in. So that's really the set philosophy of SI, and we do really follow that model. But we also, because we're small and agile, have a chance to address particular course needs, even if the pass fail rate is on par with our typical undergraduate courses. So those courses that have an assigned SI, Stacy is really great at being in contact with the faculty for those courses, and likely has already done so, or at least I hope has done so, and asks the faculty to nominate students for the SI leader position. And that's really an important step, because we want to ensure that you as the faculty member feel really good about the SI leader who is really expanding upon and helping students with your content, right? That's their primary focus. So we want to make sure you feel good about it as a faculty member. Sometimes a faculty member might not have a student that comes to mind right away, or maybe they're new teaching a course. That's okay. That's where Stacy and her tenure here at NMC can really be of help. She's often really great at helping make suggestions, but always works with the faculty in conjunction to that. So one of the things that some of the changes that we're able to make in the testing center will then trickle down directly to giving Stacy some increased capacity. And one of the things that she's using that increased capacity for right away is increasing the educational opportunities for both faculty, students at large, and student SI leaders around SI. So how do we help faculty have really good tools and resources for how to best use the SI leaders' time, and helping them brainstorm ways that could be most beneficial for them and the student? And then how do we ensure that the SI leaders have some best practices in their belt so that they know how to facilitate a good session, they know how to answer questions that might be tough, or if there's a small group and things are spiraling, or that they know how to manage that and get that back to the content focus. And then again, increasing our student at large communication so that we have students very knowledgeable. SI is a pretty well used tool. And I've heard ambassadors at Care Day get a chance to get up when they introduce themselves and they give their top tip for incoming students. And SI comes up every Care Day from a current student of use it. It is not just for students who are struggling. It is a necessary additional time for extra instruction and content. So I think we do a pretty good job of students being aware of SI, but I think we can help everyone have a better understanding of the purpose of that. Amy, did that answer your initial question?
It did, Sarah. That's perfect. And I know you and I and Stacy have talked about, maybe doing some lunch and learns and things. I know Dr. Hendricks has definitely offered in the past kind of her philosophy in working with SIs, as well as Harsha, you have too. So, if it's maybe even working one-on-one, like, hey, I'm new to having an SI. Is there someone I can, meet with about how do they work with their SIs? Boy, we've got lots of resources, and again, seasoned faculty who've used SIs and have been really wonderful with it. One of the things, thank you, Sarah. I think you're kind of off the hook, Sarah, just so you know.
Any messages that the awesome faculty want me to go run over and tell all the students?
I'm gonna go. Sarah, can I ask a real quick question for you? Is some of the students probably definitely need coaching for SI sessions, because they usually send requests like, can I get a recording of the SI? And SI model follows the collaborative learning. So I don't know if we could do a little bit more in terms of coaching the students that you do have to attend the SI sessions and you will be benefited a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's something that we're talking about, Harsha. That's really great, of like that student at large education and communication, of how do we ensure that that everyone's on the same page, that SI isn't just getting a test prep sheet and then going home, that it's really engaging with their peers and the SI leader to further the content. So yes, that is on our list. Thank you for the
Thank you.
suggestion. All right. Thanks for letting
Great.
me hang out. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Sarah. All right, 2 more things that I definitely want to make sure that we hit on. I'm going to share my screen again. Just as we were talking about academic integrity and what that looks like, if you don't know much about artificial intelligence or Chat GPT, definitely hit up Spencer or Mark or Sonia, and we'll be offering some things. But artificial intelligence, students putting in prompts for papers, whatever that looks like, that's here and here to stay. So as we talk about having those conversations regarding academic integrity, it's important that you know your philosophy with regards to utilizing some of these things. Again, if you have a conversation in your class about cheating on a test, this is as important as that kind of a conversation. For those of you, and I'm just going to give you a little snippet, Janae Gatzmeyer, who offices kind of right next to me, she's our HR rep that's here a couple days a week, came in and had a session with the Upward Bound students and said, gosh, like tried to talk to them about a resume and how important it is to build one, and it just fell on deaf ears. And I said, Janae, like, what do you feel is important about resume building? So, well, it's the process. I said, you know, they can have Chat GPT do their resume, right? And she was like, well, I mean, yeah. I said, no, they can literally do it. So I want you all, I'm going to give a very different example than none of you have this in your class, but I want you to think about writing assignments, reflections you have in your class. Here's what I wrote in Chat GPT for Janae. Build a resume to highlight that I have worked at McDonald's for 2 years and babysat for 2 families for 1 year. That's all I put. Poor Janae about died. It not only laid out kind of a format, it gave objectives. It talked specifically about what are, what are tasks that would happen at McDonald's, tasks that would happen at being a babysitter. And Janae kind of went, well, why am I like, they're just going to do this. And I said, you know what, Janae, they are. So I want you to think about, and this is very similar to all of your papers and all of your assignments. What is the most important thing that you want those students to get from you? This is really going to morph in the next 5 years into competency-based learning and what that looks like. But I'm telling you right now, you likely have an assignment that I could put a prompt in here and it will write my paper for you. Are there ways to put it in, to turn it in, figure out? A lot of times you can read these things and you can tell like, that seems like Chat GPT. The problem is you can't copy over what they give you, put it into Google or put it in here and know for sure that it's plagiarized because it writes it different every time. I could put in the same prompt, regenerate the response. It's going to give me different objectives, different work experience. It's not going to give me the same thing every time. So very similar to having a conversation. And y'all, I get it. It's exhausting. As a faculty member, it's like one more thing that you've got to prep for. But I think, again, it does allow you to think about, how do I know they're going to use this and how do I write to it? Shannon Struve she did a really wonderful job. I think I've told several of you this before, but she had an assignment that was, you have a student come in. She's, for those of you who don't know, our program director in physical therapy assistant program, said, you have a patient that comes in with significant pain in this area. Talk to me about, like, what would you recommend? She pulled up Chat GPT in front of her students and she put that prompt, the prompt she was asking for in her assignment, in front of them, and pulled up what someone could write and said, I know you all can do this. What I want you to do is then find me the research that supports why this methodology is the best to do this exercise. So she just took it and took it a little further. So again, just, I don't have Shannon here to kind of ask her what made her think of that or how to do it, but you all work around such smart people and you all are so smart. But the thing is all of us teaching and those conversations can't happen in a vacuum. Like there are times I guarantee where Alice needs to go across the hall and talk to somebody else about, okay, what do I do with this? Because I'm only thinking of this in one way. That's the most important part of teaching is using your resources, and all of you are each other's resources. So that's really important. The last thing I want to hit on, oh, if I finish on time, I'm going to be a little proud of myself. And this is truly for all of you, but definitely for my good friend, Dr. Kinshu, is talking about student distribution email lists. I've kind of gone on a whole thing. Oh, Marlon put in a link in the chat about Turnitin on AI. So I will share that. This will be my first lunch and learn that I'm really going to put into YouTube. I know how to do it. I've kept them pretty much in Teams, but I will add that link, Marlon. So thank you so much. One of the things I want to talk about, and I'll pull up here, share my screen again, is distribution lists. So at the college, we have several different distribution lists. The distribution lists that we have are based sometimes by program, based sometimes, well, we've just got a lot. So if you come here to address book, if you want to find any large distribution lists, what you want to do is put RES space DL space NMC. That's going to give you all of our distribution lists here at the college. So there's administration, admissions, advisors, college, no students, there's lots. Here's my just behind the scenes how this works. Any new students, any new faculty, as we get those onboarding paperwork, either for a new hire or for a new student, those go to our ed tech department, and primarily Jen Young is responsible for ensuring that those people get added to the distribution list. One thing that Dana is helping with, and she's kind of taken over, is ensuring that the faculty distribution lists, health professions, for example, that those have the correct people in it. One of the pleas that we would make to you, especially as you're working with your students, is if you have, we do kind of have an unwritten rule. It's not written down anywhere. If you want to send an all college email, you really have to run that by somebody, run it by your director, run it by your dean, just to say, hey, I want to get this out to the masses. Can I do that? Because we're pretty protective of what populates everybody's email. The other thing is if you are mailing or mass emailing students, make sure that the student body is the group of students you want to target. I know Alice's students, Marla's students, Whitney's students, the graduate students get inundated with emails that don't pertain to them and are largely for undergraduate students. And what that leads to is kind of like a learned helplessness of, I'm not going to check my email because it's a bunch of stuff in there that doesn't pertain to me. We're trying to be really good about making sure that all of us, as we're emailing students, are really hitting those folks that it needs to hit. Similarly for faculty, if you want to email all faculty, we do have on here, if you want faculty, are they on-campus faculty? We have faculty no adjuncts, we have faculty all. My newsletter, for example, goes to faculty all. Adjuncts, everybody, the whole works. If I'm emailing about, oh gosh, I don't know, I'm trying to think of what I wouldn't include adjuncts on that maybe, like, hey, did you get your free t-shirt? Unfortunately, a lot of times our adjuncts don't get those free t-shirts or whatever it might be. I'm not going to populate the adjuncts with that. So again, kind of as a public service announcement, please be sure you're utilizing the right distribution list. The other thing I would let you know is that have this conversation with your students as well. Students who find the distribution list, if they make sure that you just touch base with them about, if you want to email the folks in your class, what does that look like for you? How big is the class? But we have troubles when we have someone in a class that emails all students on one issue. If we've got a graduate student that is conducting a study and wants to send it out, they have to get IRB permission. They have to get my permission from an institutional standpoint to be able to do those things. And very rarely do they target and blanket the whole college. We typically have them address that student population. And it's somebody typically mails that out for them. So just know that these distribution lists, they're wonderful, but they're a blessing and a curse. And I would say for especially our graduate students and probably students in general, they get a lot of stuff they don't need. So one easy way, if you're like, well, how do I know which students are graduate students or not graduate students? Again, you can comb through this lovely list of all the things, but there is a students, one specifically for students on ground, students online. That's a really easy way to tell, are they an undergraduate or graduate student? Because most of the time that if they're an on-ground student, that doesn't include our graduate students. So I got 3 minutes to spare. I got all the time in the world. Any questions, thoughts, things lingering out there? Please, if you think of, I think Colleen and I kind of laid out for fall anyway, what maybe the lunch and learns might look like. But gosh, please feel free to let me know and give me topics. One of the things just I know that's floating out there is with Faculty Development Day. I pull up the August newsletter to work on the August newsletter. And this is the first time I've basically cut and pasted exactly what I had from last August. Last August, the first page, which will be the first page this year, is talking about Faculty Development Day. Why is it required? What does it look like? How can we have to do it? It's one thing I'm very protective of as your vice president, in that we have a lot of offerings, and that is really wonderful. But Spencer, Mark, Sonia are working very hard to make sure that the topics that we're going through on Faculty Development Day pertain to all of you, on ground, online, graduate, undergraduate. And really as a college, even though we offer a lot of offerings throughout the year, we've given up the December, January, May faculty development. We're willing to kind of give that away. And I know that it's tough with that first week, but we've got to have a little bit of time to pull everybody together. And in the end, we're asking for like 3 hours, so it's not a ton. I do think there is, as we talk this year about, and I get the calendar ready to send you all for all the meetings, we need to have a bigger conversation in academic affairs about, what meetings are really mandatory, how do we get stuff done? If you're coming back from break and you are preparing 9 courses in 3 days, that's going to be tough. I'm not judging anybody. I was a really great last minute person. Some of you have been working all summer on your fall courses, but just let's have conversations with those as it comes up. But faculty development that day is on the academic calendar through 2025. So that's not going away. But any questions you may have, let me know. Any thoughts about future lunch and learns? I will be getting this on YouTube and sending it out. So happy Friday. See most of you at graduation next week. That'll be fun. We have a wonderful speaker for the graduation speaker in the morning. Alice Kenchu is our speaker for morning graduation. It'll be great. So, all right, you guys have a great day and talk with you later. Bye.